What would happen if our medicine and our technology advanced to such a place where humanity can cure any disease, heal any injury, revert old age, and even bring back people who have recently passed away? Would this world be some sort of dream come true, or would it be a nightmare? These are the sort of questions that are asked in Scythe by Neal Shusterman, a young adult sci-fi novel that just kept popping up in all my recommendations list and everybody keep raving about. Naturally, this made me really curious about this novel, so I jumped in without really knowing much about it, or that it has a pretty amazing cover. I mean, look at this thing, the simplicity of the design, the saturation of the red in the robe, oof, pretty damn amazing. Honestly, this is one of the top 10 covers I have ever seen. But let's cut to the chase and get right into the review. So let's start with the story, which is one of the biggest factors that I look at when I'm reviewing something. Scythe takes place in this future where medicine and technology has advanced in such a way that they can cure and heal pretty much anything. If you are like 60, you can have a procedure that makes you look like 20, and even if you are killed, you can be brought back to life, except if you are burned or dissolved in a bath of acid. Naturally, this causes people to live very long lives, and to avoid an overpopulation that would dwindle Earth's limited resources, humanity had to come up with a way to get rid of people, and hence they came up with the Scythes. These are individuals who are trained in martial arts, all kinds of weaponry, poison, and pretty much any discipline that would teach them how to kill anyone. The job of the Scythe is simple, well, in theory. They have to randomly choose an individual, kill them, and that person cannot be brought back to life ever, providing a sort of manual concept of death in this futuristic world of immortals. Granted, the Scythes have a fixed quota yearly, and they cannot show any kind of bias to the people they are killing. They cannot kill them just because of personal reasons, at least not in theory. It's in this setting that we find our protagonists, Scythe and Rowan, two 16-year-olds that live vastly different but relatively normal lives. However, both of them at some point have an encounter with Scythe Faraday, after which he notices that both of them have something special about them, so he proposes to put them in a competition, after which he will choose an apprentice. The way the competition is going to work is that Scythe Faraday is going to train both Scythe and Rowan for 1 year, after which he's going to choose one of them to become his formal apprentice, and the other one will return to his or her normal life. The rest of the story focuses on Scythe and Rowan's training and the complications they face later on as they delve deeper into the surprisingly complicated world of the Scythes. I found the story mostly enjoyable. Scythe and Rowan's training/competition has some nice twists and turns here and there, but it's also fun to see how their relationship changes as they spend more time with one another, going from complete strangers to somewhat friendly but still rivals. But what I found most interesting about the story is when we delve deeper into the Scythe politics, because despite having such an important job, the Scythes have fallen into an internal conflict that have divided them into two main factions divided by two completely different ideologies. Some of the Scythes think that they should feel remorseful when taking the lives of other people, while some other Scythes think that they should actually enjoy killing. This goes to show that despite living in something so close to a perfect utopia, any institution that is created and run by human beings will fall to internal conflict. It is just part of our nature. But with that said, I do have some problems with some of the subplots that are presented in the story. Now, for the most part, the side stories that we are presented are actually interesting. They do add some nice details to the story or give us lore on the world. However, there's one in particular that has to do with Rowan's friend that it feels that it's not adding anything near to the story nor the characters. It just sort of happens and doesn't leave any lasting anything nor information on the whole plot or the characters. But overall, I would say that the story is very good. It has a nice pace that is filled with intrigue, twists and turns that keep it from being stale and actually keep you on your edge of the seat wanting to figure out what's gonna happen next. Now, moving on to the character department. I would say that for the most part, the characters are very well written. Starting with our protagonists, Citra and Rowan feel like they have very unique and contrasting personalities. Citra is more outspoken and somewhat acting on impulse, while Rowan is more quiet and prefers to analyze the situation before doing anything. But what I appreciate the most of these protagonists is that neither of them is annoying, as it tends to be the case with a lot of young adult protagonists. Both of them are actually quite mature for their age, and the transformation that they go through throughout the whole novel actually makes sense with their personalities and inner conflicts. However, I do have a complaint about our protagonists, and it has to do that for some reason they thought it was necessary to give them a romantic subplot. I guess it's not exactly illogical because at the end of the day they're just a couple of teenagers living and training in close proximity, so I guess it makes sense for them to develop feelings. My issue is that it happens really quickly. They literally go from meeting and a couple chapters later they are doing googlies to one another. And what's worse is that this romantic subplot does nothing to develop them as characters, and the plot sort of feels that it is left out halfway through, and this leads me to believe that they only added this section for them to incentivize readers to create fan art and do their shipping, and which was the case. I guess they succeeded because it only takes a few seconds of looking this novel in Tumblr or DeviantArt to see that people really truly ship these guys a lot. I would also like to talk about the supporting characters because honestly I was surprised to see how interesting they were. Most of them have very different perspectives on the politics of the Scythe, which makes it feel that they have a very clear purpose on the story. They all add a little bit to the transformation of our protagonist. However, the most interesting one, hands down, has to be the antagonist. It is true that the antagonist in this novel is considered a villain, but that is not a bad thing because it is when we get to know him a little better that we see that he is actually a very reasonable person, and his actions are because he is actually acting on what he believes is the right thing. He's not just waking up one day deciding that I'm going to do villain stuff. No, there's actually a logic to his things, and the only reason he goes so extreme with his action is that he believes this is the only way he's gonna cause a change in the Scythe. So is he right or wrong? It kind of depends on the person judging him, but he acts like a perfect antithesis of everything that our protagonists are learning and the ideologies that are being imparted. So it's a good discussion and different perspective we get through him. However, the fact that we have so many supporting characters only make the bad ones stand out more. Fortunately, aside from Rowan's friend, there's only one other character that Phil doesn't really have a big impact on the story, and that is the character that we come to know as the head of the Scythe. Now, he feels like a very passive character. He is somewhat involved in important events to the plot, but that's it. He is involved. He doesn't cause them. He's just there. Things happen to him and around him. He never really feels that he has a hand in the events that are happening. And the few events that he actually has a hand in go literally nowhere. To the point that it really makes me wonder, why are we wasting so much time focusing on him if he doesn't really have a big impact on the story? I also wanted to take a moment to talk about the writing in this novel because honestly, it's very damn good. The prose here is short and to the point but never feels simplistic. It only takes a few well thought out words for Mr. Shusterman to create vivid images in our head. From character to settings, we always have a good idea of what this world and the people who inhabit it looks like. And this is most noticeable in the fighting scenes. We always have a good sense of geography, where everybody is located, where the fighting is taking place, and how the match is happening. And also the punches and kicks, they are so vivid that you will think they're actually happening to you. I do have a complaint about the writing though, and it is that halfway through the novel, one of our protagonists has to go from North America to South America. Unfortunately, we don't get as much of a description to see how different this section of the world is from North America, which is disappointing because I was dying to see how different South America was from the setting that we were before, and this was the perfect opportunity to do some great world building, but it feels like it was just wasted. Speaking of world building, the one that we find in Scythe is absolutely fascinating. It is very clear that a lot of thought has gone into creating this world because we can see how the concept of immortality has affected every single aspect in life. For example, since people now live for hundreds of years, it's very common for people to have multiple families, and parents don't seem to worry as much about their children since they cannot die, so what's the worst that can happen to them? And it's also most fascinating when we see the relationship between regular people and the Scythes. It is this sort of respectful yet fearful relationships in Scythes is really the only thing that they fear. So yeah, the whole world really feels alive, and the story that is taking place feels like it's just one of the stories that could be happening in the whole world. It really feels like a living and breathing world that couldn't care that this is just one more story that's happening. So taking all this into consideration, I'm going to give Scythe 5 stars out of 5. Yes, we have a young adult masterpiece right here. The story is great, and for the most part the characters are incredible too. While there's some issues with some of the plot points and some of the minor characters, none of this is a deal breaker, and I highly recommend Scythe to anyone that wants to enjoy a sci-fi novel that is not too heavy. And that was the review for Scythe. If you have read this book, please let me know in the comments what do you thought of it. And if you like this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing if you want more content on books, manga, and graphic novels. Other than that, my name is Aaron, and I'll be seeing you all